Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. And we have a very special guest with us this week, a face that I'm sure you're all definitely noticing around the NFL UK, and not just NFL UK, on Sky Sports Netball, and amongst other sports. Hannah Wilkes is joining us, coming very much the face of Sky Sports NFL, Sky Sports Netball. I've seen a lot of your work with the netball and how amazing that's been doing. Obviously, you do a lot of the Sky Sports news now. I mean, it seems like it's full. The train's full steam ahead for the Hannah Wilkes show here. I mean, Mrs. Sky Sports might be in the title in the near future. You never know.
Well, I mean, my plan was always world domination. So yeah, this is all going swimmingly. But yeah, just came back from the Super Bowl straight into the best netball season we've had on Sky in some time. That finished early June, took a bit of time off, and now summer of Sky Sports News and a few other bits. And training camp started. So there's never any true rest, but it's all good fun. And I've got such a buzz now that training camp's on and things are actually happening. Pre-season games soon, and you can almost smell September in the air.
It's Hannah Wilkes' world, and we're just all living in it. That's the problem. That's what it's going to be.
I mean, in my head, yes, but other people probably have something to say about that.
Well, you're very right. Training camp has just started, and we've all seen it on Twitter. Things coming out. I mean, we had a quite spectacular vision of Aaron Rodgers in the vest and the long hair, looking very suave. He knows he's just been paid. He's not bothered about losing his friend Devontae Adams. He's ready for another season, Hannah, isn't he? I mean, that guy. I mean, there's a lot of fans that don't enjoy him because he seems arrogant, but you got to admit, when his swagger's like that, it's hard to be like, well, he's pretty amazing quarterback. And do you think he's going to have another spectacular season? I'm sure you've seen it all over social media.
I mean, this is just the thing, isn't it? And I know I sometimes internally at least give Aaron Rodgers a hard time. Like, when you look at all the off-field stuff that happened during the season with his, what did he say? I can't remember. Not vaccinated, the other word he used. Immunization.
Immunized, yes.
And then the fact that he tried to steal International Women's Day this year. Shout out to Russell Wilson for usurping him on the day. Yeah, I like to give him a bit of a hard rap, but then you actually look at what he's doing and what he's still doing. And he had the one rider essentially in Devontae Adams. Now he's got none, and he'll probably still get the Packers to 13 wins and be part of the AP conversation come January. That's just what he does. And it's incredible to see, really. The guy is unstoppable, and there's no one playing at that level. So yeah, I mean, he can turn up to training camp however he wants to turn up to training camp. I'm here for the entertainment value of it, that's for sure. And that's what we love to see from these guys, right? Yeah, you can call it arrogance, but hell, it's entertaining, it's personality. If he was just turning up and going, hi, that would be so boring. And he's been in the league 16 years. He's got to have some fun with it.
Well, of course, we'll be talking later, I'm sure, about the fact that we are going to see Aaron Rodgers in London this year as well for the Green Bay game. And obviously tickets released the other day. I know some people aren't too happy. We're not going to dive in on that. We don't care to note on that, but I know I'll be there. I'm sure Hannah will maybe be there as well. But firstly, we've got to talk about your LA Rams, because the end of the season, I mean, I saw you on social media. You were so happy that the Rams won the Super Bowl. It was sort of written out. I mean, a lot of people wanted the Bengals to win because it was a bit of an underdog feeling, Joe Burrow feeling as well. But the Rams really did deserve to win it in the end. Matt Stafford had such a fantastic season. And I mean, what was it like for you on the night? I mean, it feels like ages ago now. It was in February. It was freezing cold. We didn't even think about 40-degree weather that has just happened. We all just thought, it's just going to be a normal summer where we wait for the NFL. And in fact, we've been baking this last week, and it feels like that snow, and sitting down watching the nice and cold to watch the Super Bowl in England at 1 a.m. in the morning or 2 a.m. just feels so far ago now. But I'm sure the feeling of joy is still sort of resonating with you, Hannah.
Well, Freddie, I had a very different experience because it was 30 degrees in LA that week, and I went into SoFi Stadium on Super Bowl Sunday with a touch of sunburn, and it was brilliant. Yeah, I mean, God, it feels like yesterday on one hand and like a lifetime ago on the other. And it was one of those weird things, sort of watching it, being there in the moment. I don't think you really sort of process what you're watching. And I've said this a few times, that when Cooper Kupp scored that touchdown in the fourth quarter, I went so crazy, kind of forgetting the fact that there was still a minute and a bit on the clock and that Joe Burrow was getting the ball back. So when Joe Burrow came back on the field, I was like, what? And then of course Aaron Donald gets the sack, and it all just felt quite like an out of body experience, actually. But incredible to be there for it and to see the sort of all-in mentality pay off, because if it hadn't paid off, you know how those conversations would have gone. But in fact, what you've seen is so many more teams making those kind of moves, and they're big trades, and look what the Broncos are doing. And it's easy to go on, the Broncos are still, a quarterback and more away from being a Super Bowl, but you don't really know. And that it's changed. I think it's changed the whole mentality and approach of a lot of these teams. And the wheels might come off down the line, but I don't think they necessarily will. I think it's a game changer for how teams build, basically, going forward. It was just incredible to be part of, and I have to say I have watched it back a few times since, and the joy never dies. And I get a little bit annoyed. I actually got a bit annoyed when it got to sort of free agency and the draft, and I was like, no one's talking about the fact the Rams just won. You get like 3 weeks of Super Bowl champs and dissecting it, and then everything moves ahead to the next season. So it's amazing, and you just got to try and run it back. But I think fair play to the Bengals as well. I mean, look, both those teams, four seed matchups in the Super Bowl, maybe even lower.
Yeah.
Remember now, different season. It's like it's erased from my brain. That's what made it so magical as well, because there was just that sense of, if you've got this team on one hand that's got this Hollywood story they built the team, then on the other hand you've got the Bengals fairy tale. So I think even if the Rams had lost, although I'd have been gutted, I wouldn't have booked Bengals the victory either. It's just nice to be able to refer to your team as the world champs.
And you also beat if you forget, you beat 2/3 of your own division on the way there as well. You beat the Cards and the 49ers. Like, it's quite a feat to have gone all that way, and really you were the deserving team on the night. And like I say, as soon as you blink and Super Bowl's been won, we go into free agency, we go into trade season, we go into the draft, and then and then suddenly 2 weeks ago we were like, oh, I just can't wait for it to start. And then training camp's now starting. The wheels have started really turning again. And the Rams did what they do a lot. Didn't really have any draft picks. We're not going to dive into that. You only started picking in the 3rd round, but there was a couple of players that left. You obviously traded away Robert Woods to Tennessee Titans. You lost Von Miller, even though he was just sort of a mid-season acquisition last year anyway. Darius Williams, who really shone for you at cornerback, has gone as well. But you've done some fantastic things. Well, you've extended Matt Stafford 4-year, $160 million deal. You brought in veterans like Allen Robinson, Bobby Wagner. Do you think that it's just business as usual for the Rams? It feels like they've won the Super Bowl, and some teams, become more attractive maybe to players that they maybe didn't realize they wanted to be there. Maybe there's a bit of wheeling dealing. Maybe sometimes there's no movement at all, and they just feel like they're just confident in their team. However, the Rams have made these movements this offseason. Do you think that's just their MO? Is it they just move with the ball, that nothing really phases them? That, okay, there's problems that crop up, but they've got solutions ready to sort of sort that all out?
I think it's the nature of the league and the business. I mean, you're sad to see Von Miller go, but you knew he was just parachuting in to do a job. And, he may very well go and do exactly the same thing in Buffalo. Wouldn't that be amazing to see? And it's sad to see Bobby Trees go and all the rest of it. But I think when you've extended Matthew Stafford, like you say, you've paid Aaron Donald in a big way. It's the nature of the business. You can't keep everyone. And that doesn't always work in itself either. I mean, think back to this time last year, we were all talking, wow, the Bucs are bringing back pretty much their full 22 starters. And, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to be able to run it back. You don't know what's going to happen with injuries or what Matthew Stafford's going to do in the final few minutes of the divisional round. So I think it's the nature of the business. The team has to evolve, and I like the pieces they've brought in. I think what we've seen with Von Miller coming in previously is, that bringing Bobby Wagner in, some people are saying he's kind of past his best. Yeah, maybe, but there's something that happens in LA. There's something about what they're doing there that almost bring back like a renaissance, the best of these guys, and unearths that magic from before, even if it only lasts 6 months. That's all it's to last. I think Allen Robinson's a great signing. And I still think we'll see OBJ back in a Rams jersey at some point this season. I think Les Snead has spoken to it, just sort of saying, it doesn't make sense to sign a free agent like of his caliber and of his price tag now, when you don't know what's going to unfold preseason, the first few weeks of the season. And you might still need that flex before he's healthy. So I hope we'll see him back down the stretch. But no, I'm not too worried. I think that's the nature of the game. There's been so much movement this year. And now that they're in, everyone's back in training camp, you're going to start to see what, how teams are looking and all the rest of it. So no, it's the nature of the beast. And I think bringing Aaron Donald back is the key piece to being a contender, because the Rams without Aaron Donald are not Super Bowl champions right now. And, I think the NFC West isn't the division it was this time last year, but I think it'd be a lot harder without 99.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think, because a lot of team successes, they have maybe great depth or a particularly great quarterback, I suppose. But for the Rams, it feels like you've just got four to five players that are super elite in very key positions. You've got the cornerback in Jalen Ramsey. You've got the defensive lineman Aaron Donald. You've got the quarterback in Matt Stafford. You've got the wide receiver in Cooper Kupp. And do you feel like, well, we've got them four, they're the four key pieces you need to win games, essentially, I suppose. And everything else can just move consistently around it as long as we keep them four pieces locked down. Do you think that's what a lot of NFL teams will start doing now? Because like you said earlier with the Rams wheeling and dealing, a lot of people are subscribing to their thought of using their draft picks to trading players mid-season, to not be afraid to trade away their first round picks, and to not necessarily be a young team, but not an old team at the same time. Just move with the times and just try and have that attractiveness for players to come in. I suppose being based in LA gives you a little bit of attractiveness to any player to go there, because it's LA, of course. It's not Green Bay in Wisconsin where it's cold or anything like that. But do you think a lot of teams now are going to subscribe into that? Because a lot of people, because we have teams like the Patriots, like Bill Belichick, who's such a dictator within that team and has never really moved off of his times, even though the game has moved forward. And yet the Rams have been the prime example of changing year on year to how the game is changing as well. Do you think that is going to be a transition that NFL teams are all going to do?
I think so. And I think it speaks a lot to culture more than anything. If you look at the Bengals as well, a big part of what they credit with getting them to the Super Bowl last season was the energy, the culture, the cohesiveness, the closeness of the locker room of those players, of how they interact with Zach Taylor. And I think that's a big part of what the Rams have got going for them, is the energy around the team. And I'm not saying they're the only team that has that. Obviously, you have that across the league, but I think that's really important. I think what often gets overlooked in the sort of no first round draft picks conversation is how many picks in the latter rounds a team like the Rams have had in the last few years, and what they have done with the talent that they've taken third round and later. I mean, Cooper Kupp was a third round pick, and that seems wild after the sort of triple crown that he picked up last season. And I think, I think there's that player development that, you've got those key pieces and whatever, but you bring through those younger players alongside those big stars. I mean, Joe Noteboom's going to be trying to replace Andrew Whitworth. Really difficult job. He's done it when he was hurt before. He wasn't quite there, but he's had another couple of years of learning from a veteran. And I think the development is what the Rams do particularly well. And I think, I think you'll see it in preseason. Some of the names that were coming up during the Super Bowl when OBJ went off, and you're like, who's that? So, well, actually, preseason, he played a ton of snaps. And I think there is all that stuff there. And I think, I think it comes down to culture, cohesiveness. And if you're going to do it differently, and if you're going to go make a big splash for these, four chess pieces, as you say, you have to be really smart at how you build around them. And I think that's what has worked so far for Les Snead and Sean McVay. And it'll be interesting to see how it works going forward when you reach another couple of years with no first round draft picks. But very rare do you get a Joe Burrow that transforms your franchise and gets you into the Super Bowl in his second year, basically.
Well, let's have a look at your division as well, because it's been an interesting time for the NFC West, because really the Rams are the only team that doesn't seem to be in transition. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks have just traded away Russell Wilson. They have got a lot of picks in for that and players as well, which could really turn around the franchise, I suppose, which has been a bit stale. We'll probably go team by team with this, but Then we've got the 49ers, who have pretty much said they're going with Trey Lance, and they've just opened the door to Jimmy Garoppolo getting to be traded away. Whether anyone comes in and offers that, we don't know. And then we look at the Arizona Cardinals, who had a very disgruntled Kyler Murray around the draft and didn't seem like he maybe would stick around or even play this year. There's definitely rumors of him holding out, who has now just been extended, been paid the big money. I mean, each of these teams seem to have their problems and have found solutions, but maybe not the long-term solution. What do you think about this division this year coming up? Because I think personally, I think it's Rams for the take. I think the Rams wipe this division this year. I just don't see any competition here within this division.
I'm inclined to agree, and it's mad because especially the last couple of years, even this time last year, you're looking at the NFC West and you're going, this is a really tough division. And full credit to the 49ers because they've been in the NFC Championship and Super Bowl, back years essentially at this point. And they've got there with Jimmy G. So yeah, the Trey Lance thing. I mean, they took him with first round pick. They kind of at some point you have to do it, and it's clear that Jimmy Garoppolo is a decent quarterback, but he's not getting them across the line in the way that they want to. I don't think because of him, they've been in NFC Championship games and Super Bowls of late. So you've got to make the change at some point, and you have to start fresh. You have to start fresh sooner rather than later and getting Trey Lance comfortable. I think the bigger question and problem at the moment is the question marks around Deebo Samuel. Because they really need him and they need to sort that contract out. So yeah, San Francisco. The thing is with San Francisco, I think because of Kyle Shanahan and the way that team is run, they're always going to be up there. They're always going to find a way to get into the playoffs. So I think maybe not this year because of Trey Lance, but I don't know because I haven't seen enough of them yet. So it'll be really interesting because you can't write them off entirely with that head coach. The Seahawks, I cannot get my head around it. It just feels like Seattle is sort of in a rebuild, but not entirely in a rebuild. The front office doesn't quite know what it's doing. The head coach is probably a little too old to be doing a rebuild. And yeah, you got a whole load of players in exchange for Russell Wilson, but Geno Smith, Drew Lock, I just don't really see that as a team that's going to contend because they've been without Russell Wilson. They're so up and down. The last couple of years, their defense has been terrible. But Russell Wilson's arm has been what's made up for it when he's been healthy. So that is a problem. And then we get to the Cardinals. And this is my least favorite sort of trope and narrative in all of football, when a relatively young quarterback, or any positional player, but essentially quarterback, who has, let's be honest, not really achieved anything yet, kind of pulls the deleting them off Instagram move and basically throwing his toys out the pram. Yeah. I think the pressure is on Kyler Murray in a big, big way. And he's a good player. There's no doubt about that. I personally am not yet convinced that he is an elite quarterback and that he's worth that much money. But that's just the market and how these contracts have gone. I don't think they're a direct reflection of actual talent anymore. It's more just like, we've got to pay them this flashy amount because otherwise it doesn't look like enough of an endorsement. And then when you see that they've had to put in the contract 4 hours of film study, and I know that's been analysed a lot this week already, it's just interesting. It's really interesting. And I think Cliff Kingsbury said that he had nothing to do with that. But someone did somewhere, and that you don't write that in just because. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have that in his contract. Tom Brady doesn't need that in his contract. I'm sure Justin Herbert doesn't need that in his contract. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there will be DeAndre Hopkins. Without him for the first 6 weeks of the season, that's tough because we know the drop-off in production between him and Kyler Murray if he's not there, obviously, because he can't catch the ball if he's not on the field. And I just think they are slightly aging out a little bit as well now, a lot of the sort of key pieces in Arizona. Because you've done that thing, you've been trying to build the team around your quarterback on his rookie contract. He's not on that anymore. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a very different division from what it was a year ago. And I will be a very disappointed, angry and confused Rams fan if we haven't got this thing locked up nice and early.
what was weird with the Cardinals, it felt like it was win now mode for them last year, because they hadn't paid Kyle yet, so they had the money to be able to get in the free agents, which because we questioned it really. We were us as a collective on the podcast before the season started, were very big for the Cardinals to do well and to get into the playoffs, and we really thought they were going somewhere. And then they started signing some older free agents. We were like, well, I don't really get what they're doing here. They need to be young and vibrant, and I don't really get what the age factor is. And then when they were going on this run, we were like, oh, they've got the age factor in for the experience, for big game moments. And then when it was creeping in that Kyler's not really a leader, Kyler's not a big active voice within the locker room, and it was like, oh well, I completely get now why you've brought in JJ Watt, who is an absolute known leader for wherever he's been. Well, just the Texans outside of Arizona for leading a locker room, and it suddenly made a lot of sense. And now they went on that great run, and then they just completely collapsed at the end of the year, and it felt like, well, now they're paying Kyler big. They lost Chandler Jones, who's a huge piece, I think, for them. They've still got some good players, but it feels like not the boat sail, because that feels like they're never going to get to that moment again. But that was the moment, I thought, for them to take advantage. You had Matt Stafford, who was integrated into the LA. They could really have taken advantage of him at some point. A Seattle team that had, like you said, zero defense. And what a crime that is to the fans of Seattle, who had such great years. Seattle, that the franchise just seems to have torn itself apart a little bit by just being poorly ran. It's not built in the right way. It's like you said, relied heavily on Russell Wilson. That's what I've always said is, as long as Russell Wilson's in the driving seat, I can never count out Seattle, because he's just that good. And then with the 49ers, they just have a game plan, don't they? But they run very, very well, and they always have good defense. And it's interesting what you did say, though, is that they've done really well last 2 years with Jimmy G at the helm. And it may sound like you said that Jimmy G was one of the people that did that for them. Do you think that he did?
No, that's not what I meant. I think
no.
I don't know what I meant, and what I hope I said was, I don't think they got there because of him.
Oh, right, sorry. I thought you meant it was.
No. They got there in spite of him. Like, look, he made some great plays along the way.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that it was a Tom Brady or.
It wasn't the Jimmy G show, was it?
It wasn't Jimmy G that got them there.
Yeah.
It was their defense. It was their run game. But they got there with him doing enough. But yeah, no. If that came out that way, that's not what I meant.
No. I may have misheard, to be fair. Do you think I'm right about the Cardinals, though? That it was a bit of a buy all in that year. You don't pay your quarterback. You got a load of money. You got a good game plan.
I think a little bit,
and I think they win it.
They've done it a couple of times last year. They started really strong, and they've just faded off down the stretch. And obviously injuries happen. I think also it's just to figure them out. I think they're going to play 4 or 5 wide receivers a lot, and earlier in the season that sort of works because no one's quite sure yet. But I think teams just figure them out, and I don't think they've managed to keep it fresh enough and dynamic enough, and I don't know who that falls to just sort of see it out really down the stretch. I think that's the thing. You need a team that is robust enough physically as well, because you mentioned Watt, but when was the last time he played a full season? You bring in these veterans, you've either got to look after them or you've got to know that they're going to be healthy. So I think in a way they did similar to what the Rams are doing, bringing these experienced guys, go all in. I don't think it was quite their all-in season yet, but there were definitely pieces. And based on the way they played the first half of last season, I mean, you didn't see them completely crashing out in the wild card round, barely putting points on the board, did you? They were looking like the real deal. And they've got to learn how to maintain that from a coaching perspective and game planning perspective as well. Because when it comes to a lot, I think they get figured out quite quickly in terms of season. Whereas the great teams, you see Tom Brady doing stuff in December that you're like, where'd that come from? That's the difference. And I do think that the offensive line's getting old as well. Which, if you've got a relatively small quarterback who runs around a lot, can get himself out of trouble, but he still needs an O-line in front of him. So yeah, it's question marks. I know I've angered some people with my Cardinals downness, but they were just so hyped last year, and then Prove me wrong.
But you, well, you had the last laugh because you became Super Bowl champion. So you know, some people would say after you keep going on at them, it's just gloating. So you know, I could see their anger maybe, but it's fine. It's okay.
Let me have this. I mean, look, Matthew Stafford's got some sort of elbow issue. It could all be over by October for me.
Well, that's it. We've got to really move on to, like I said, the tickets were just released yesterday for the Green Bay Packers, the New York Giants game. Of course, only one of 3 games that we are having this year. No ticket talking here, but we've got the Minnesota Vikings against the New Orleans Saints, first game at Tottenham. The second game, like I said, the Packers v. the Giants at Tottenham as well. The Denver Broncos and the Jacksonville Jaguars coming to Wembley. And of course, we have the debut this year of the Munich game at the Allianz Arena, which will be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Kansas City Chiefs. I presume you'll be maybe there working, Hannah. I'm not sure, but how excited are you for the games to come back again? It feels like, you may not be able to say this or not, I'm really sure, but it feels like the NFL have stepped up a little bit with the talent that they are bringing this year, because it felt, we commented a lot about it last year, but it felt like last year that it was just underwhelming, and it felt like the UK was giving the games that the American public were like, oh, well, I don't mind giving up that game. Like, we don't care about that game. You can have that one. Whereas this year, it's like, oh, no, we're getting a Broncos game, you know, with Russell Wilson, and we're getting Aaron Rodgers. Okay, Davante Adams, we would have liked him as well, but we're getting the Green Bay Packers for the first time, of course. And there's a plethora of guys who have just been drafted as well in the first 10 picks, but are going to be playing over here as well, which is going to be really fun to see. But how pumped are you that it is really only around the corner till in September, well, until October, till the games start over here?
I mean, all I will say is imagine the roller coaster of emotions that the people that had booked Tampa to play the first Germany game felt when Tom Brady retired and then I'm retired. I can only imagine. I mean, I don't know exactly games are on screen yet. I think I kind of do, but I can't really say anything. But I hope to be at all of them or most of them in some capacity, whether fun or working. And yeah, it's brilliant. And I think the NFL is so committed to growing the game really internationally now. And I think what we're seeing from this year on is COVID is in the past. And we've got the new sort of agreements in place where teams have to come and play internationally. I forget the details, a certain amount of time every few years, which is why we finally got the Packers, because Green Bay were not going to be giving up a home game particularly willingly. And I don't think other teams wanted to give up the Packers coming to town either, because it's a big draw for them financially. And I think what's really exciting as well is we've got these teams who've got these home marketing areas now, so they can market themselves in certain markets. So the Vikings are going big on the UK. It's going to be great to see them playing the Saints. Don't sleep on the Vikings this year is my feeling. And I think it's going to be really great. And it does, you're right. It feels like there's a bit like a little bit of energy, and that spark has come back to it, because we were so happy just to have the games back last year. Let's not forget that. With what had happened the year before, having those games back felt like a gift. And they went maybe not the most competitive of games, but I enjoyed watching
Adam on the podcast reckoned that it was almost a little bit of a test for here. It was almost like that it was a give them maybe some poorer games and see if the interest is still there after COVID.
I don't think that's.
I don't know if that. I think that's fans maybe looking into it too much, maybe. But I think demand
was. With how high the demand was pre-COVID, they don't need to test the waters. They know how high the demand is over here. That was nothing to do with it. I don't know how they pick the teams and the matchups, but that certainly wasn't it as far as I'm aware. And I think it would be remiss to say it was. But yeah, I think the energy is back, and I think we've got Wembley back as well, which fans always love going to. And then adding in the Germany game, the fan base over there is huge. So it's going to be massive. And there's a game in Mexico City as well this year. So it's 5 international games, which is the point we were at pre-pandemic. You couldn't go full steam ahead with it last year because there were still so many restrictions and stuff in place. Whereas now you can. So it's just getting back to where it was and then pushing on from there. And I cannot wait.
Me neither. I'm really happy. I got my ticket for the Packers Giants game the other day, so going to 2
well
games.
Done. How?
Year, which will be. Oh well, we had a lot of people with a finger on the trigger, so luckily, We won't go into it because it might paint certain ticket administrators with in a very unfortunate light. But yeah, we didn't do what the advice said. Let's put it that way, maybe. But it's going to be really exciting. I'm really pumped for the German game as well, because the German fans have been coming over here in their droves. I remember one year when we went and there was like, I don't know, 25 kids all wearing like their like team uniform that they like come out, and it was like, oh, I didn't realize like it was that big in Germany. And then really got chatting to some people, and it's actually so huge over there. So I'm really glad that they're going to be able to get that game over there, because
it's bigger in a lot
they
of
deserve it.
It's bigger in a lot of ways than it is here. You know, they have a professional league out there.
Yeah.
Phoebe Schechter, who you know from Sky Sports and everywhere, she's brilliant. She's been coaching out there last year, like as a full-time position, because there is the league up there. So in a lot of ways, they're ahead of where we are at sort of the game level, actually playing the game as well. So yeah, it's gonna be huge, and they're big Seahawks fans out there too. So they have nailed that one. Although I'm guessing they kind of wish Russell Wilson was still there, but who knows? Geno Smith got to go. Oh.
Well, Hannah, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much, and thank you for giving up your time to be on with us tonight. Thank you all for watching. It's been another one of the Friends of the F-Tag episodes. Make sure you like and subscribe and listen to us on all podcast and platform channels. Phoebe Schechter was a name that I was hoping you'd say, because I do believe our fellow podcaster George on Sports, I believe he is going to be doing an interview with her on his channel very soon. Yes, he comes along and joins us as well. He's part of the team as well. So George is great.
It's just one big happy NFL loving family, isn't it?
Exactly. It's all of us are in it together, and that's what makes the NFL UK so great. But I believe I don't know, this may get edited out, I admit, but he is interviewing Phoebe, I believe, in the next few days. So I'm sure that'll be out as well. So go check that out, because George is great. Phoebe's also fantastic as well, and I'm sure they'll be talking a lot about the NFL and the NFL in the UK over the London games. So again, Hannah, thank you for coming on. And I'm sure we'll see you very soon. Hopefully see you at the London games. And thank you very much all for watching, and we'll see you all very soon. Have a great rest of your week.